I never thought a joke could expose a marriage the way silence eventually did. At the time, it felt harmless, almost forgettable. A dinner table, familiar faces, the low hum of conversation, and that easy rhythm you fall into when you think you belong. Elizabeth sat beside me, her leg brushing mine under the table. We had been married 7 years, long enough to know each other's habits, long enough to believe we were steady. The joke slipped out naturally, a small, self-deprecating comment about how I could never remember where we kept the good plates. Nothing sharp, nothing cruel, just something meant to keep the moment light. For half a second, there was silence. Then her friends laughed. Not warmly, not kindly. It was quick and brittle. Elizabeth laughed too, louder than everyone else. It shouldn't have mattered. I told myself that immediately. People laugh. That's what jokes are for. But when I glanced at her, something had shifted. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were on the table, then her phone, then anywhere but my face. The warmth in her posture was gone, replaced by a careful distance. The rest of the night moved on without incident. Conversation flowed. Plates were cleared. Someone poured more wine. I smiled when expected, nodded at the right moments, played my role. But inside, a quiet confusion settled in. On the drive home, I mentioned it lightly. Did that joke land weird? I asked. Elizabeth stared out the window. You're overthinking, she said. It was fine. That should have ended it. Instead, it marked the beginning. After that night, small changes appeared. Subtle enough to dismiss if you wanted to. She stopped finishing my sentences. When I spoke, she waited an extra beat before responding. Our conversations became efficient, practical. Groceries, schedules, bills. I tried to compensate without realizing it. I chose my words more carefully. I laughed at her jokes even when I didn't find them funny. I avoided teasing her, avoided anything that might draw attention. Somewhere along the way, I decided that being agreeable was safer than being myself. Weeks passed, then months. The distance grew quietly, like fog rolling in. She stayed out later with friends. Her phone never left her hand. When I reached for her at night, she'd already turned away, claiming she was tired. One evening, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the silence pressed in hard enough that I couldn't ignore it. Did I do something wrong? I asked. She sighed, not angrily, but with impatience. Why do you always need reassurance? That question stayed with me. I started wondering when reassurance became a burden, when connection became work. I thought back to that dinner, to the laugh that didn't feel like laughter, to the way her eyes had avoided mine. If this moment feels familiar, take a second to like this story so it can reach others who might be quietly living to the same shift. I didn't confront her. I didn't argue. I adapted. I shrank myself just enough to fit the new space. She allowed me. I told myself this was what commitment looked like. I kept telling myself this was temporary, that marriages go through phases, that patience was proof of love. I believed if I stayed steady, things would return to what they were. I believed silence was safer than conflict, and endurance was better than honesty. Those beliefs felt noble at first. Over time, they felt heavy. I carried them quietly, never realizing how much of myself I was leaving behind each day, without anyone noticing or asking. But late at night, when the house was quiet and Elizabeth's back was turned to me, I replayed that laugh in my head. Not the sound of it, but what followed. What do you think hurts more, being openly criticized or being quietly dismissed? Share your thoughts in the comments. I didn't know it then, but that joke wasn't the problem. It was the permission it gave her. Permission to pull away without explanation. Permission to let distance replace honesty. And once that permission was taken, there was no easy way to ask for it back. The distance didn't arrive all at once. It settled in layers, thin enough to ignore, heavy enough to suffocate. Elizabeth began correcting me in front of others, casually, like it was helpful. If I misremembered a date or told a story slightly differently, she'd step in with a smile that felt rehearsed. Each time, laughter followed. Each time, I said nothing. I told myself this was maturity, that not reacting was strength. But strength shouldn't feel like erasure. One night, We attended another gathering. Different house, same circle. I barely spoke. I nodded, listened, stayed invisible. Halfway through the evening, someone asked why I'd gone so quiet. Before I could answer, Elizabeth laughed and said, "James has always been like this, sensitive." The room chuckled. Something inside me went still. Not angry, not hurt, just empty. On the drive home, she hummed along to the radio. I stared at the road. When we pulled into the driveway, I turned off the engine and sat there. When did I become the punchline? I asked. She didn't hesitate. "You're reading into things again." That was the moment I understood. Not that she'd changed, that I had been adapting to someone who no longer saw me. If you've ever felt yourself shrinking to keep the peace, comment below with the word silence. I stopped trying after that. Not dramatically. I just withdrew the effort I'd been pouring in unnoticed. I spoke when spoken to. I laughed when appropriate. I kept things polite. The house grew quieter, but lighter too. Without constant self-monitoring, I could finally breathe. Elizabeth noticed a change within weeks. She asked if something was wrong. I told her I was fine. That answer irritated her. She preferred me uncertain, explaining, seeking approval. One evening, she accused me of pulling away. The irony almost made me smile. "I didn't drift," I said. "I stayed exactly where you left me." She stared at me, genuinely confused. That's when I realized she hadn't been cruel on purpose. She'd simply grown comfortable with my silence. If this story stirred something in you, consider sharing it with someone who might need a reminder that respect fades quietly before it disappears completely. We separated 3 months later. No explosive fight, no betrayal, just a mutual acknowledgement that something essential had been lost long before either of us named it. When I packed my things, Elizabeth stood in the doorway, arms crossed, searching my face for emotion. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "I know," I replied, and I meant it. The truth was harder. She didn't hurt me. She stopped seeing me, and I helped by staying silent. The first night alone felt strange. Quiet in a different way. Honest. I slept deeply for the first time in years. When I woke up, there was no weight on my chest, no tension in my jaw, just space. Weeks later, I caught myself telling a joke to a coworker. He laughed, warmly, without hesitation. The sound startled me. I laughed too, surprised at how easily it came. What do you think ends relationships faster? Disrespect or the silence that follows it? Join the discussion in the comments. I don't regret loving Elizabeth. I regret editing myself until there was nothing left to recognize. Staying silent didn't save the marriage. It just delayed the truth. If I could go back to that dinner, I wouldn't change the joke. I'd change what came after. I'd speak. I'd ask why the laughter felt sharp. I'd refuse to disappear to make others comfortable. Because the moment you silence yourself to be accepted, you've already begun to leave. If this story resonated with you, like it, comment with your perspective, and subscribe for stories that explore the quiet moments where relationships truly change and why noticing them matters.